lot of people who have very humble backgrounds are drawn to me because of my story. And a lot of people I train, because I have a heart, I'm open to people who really have the same story like me. I try to encourage them. I tell them, see, never let your background bring you back to the ground. And then another way I put that is to say that my challenges, my problems, my issues, my story, these are not excuses for failure. These are not excuses for me not succeeding. They are circumstances, they are the realities under which I must succeed.
Hello and welcome to another episode on the Stretch Street Podcast. Hello. So, 60% of those who visit this channel are not subscribed. Are you one of them? Come on. Anyways, I know you forgot, right? So now I'm here to remind you to hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications so you don't have to miss any of our episodes, all right? Now, let us dive into today's episode and I'll see you on the other side. Hello and welcome to another episode on the Stretch Street Podcast. This is the energetic EJ. And of course, you know, I am your host and welcome. If this is your first time watching or listening to this podcast, you are welcome. I've been waiting for you for so long and I'm glad that you're finally here. Did somebody invite you? If they did, please send me a message to stretchstreetpod@gmail.com to tell me who invited you because I might just have a gift for you and that person as well. If this is your first time again, please do remember to subscribe to this YouTube channel or to the audio podcast, depending on where you're listening to me from. I would love to also have you in my community. So please use the link attached to the description of this podcast to join my community. I appreciate you in advance. Thank you so much. Also, remember that you can donate. You can support the work that I do here by using the Buy Me a Coffee link or the Patreon link that is in the description of this podcast. Without further ado, I would love to get into the conversation of the day. I want you to meet my guest for the day. So don't go anywhere. Sit back, relax as we get to meet my guest for the day.
I'm David and I'm from Ibadan, Nigeria. By origin, I'm from Ogun State, Nigeria, but I'm currently living in Ibadan, Nigeria. I do professional speaking, so I'm a professional speaker and I'm a speakerpreneur. My philosophy of life I got from a 16-year-old lady several years ago who lost 3 beloved ones within the space of a year. And she said, some people are not meant to be part of your life all along, but to help feeling were the best fitting for a while. So I believe that everyone around me, everyone currently with me, has something to bring into my life, and I need to open myself up to them so that they can fill those holes in my life. If I do not give them the permission to fill the holes in my life, those holes will remain forever. And I may not have everyone around me for the rest of my life, but right now they have a place in my life through the questions they're asking me, through the problems I'm solving for them, through the questions I'm even asking them, through the services I'm providing for them. They are filling certain holes and certain spaces of emptiness in my life that if I do not give them the permission to fill, they will remain void for the rest of my life. When I was younger, I could not talk to girls. Today, when I go to events, girls just take pictures of me. That's crazy.
No matter how dark the night is, the sun always rises. No matter how hard life gets, keep moving forward. You never know what amazing things are waiting just around the corner. No story is too rough and no journey is too tough. Join us on Stretch Street to be inspired by the stories of people who have been through it all and come out stronger. Stretch Street Podcast. Stretching without snapping.
All right, guys, welcome back. Okay, so now you've met my guest for the day, and I love the fun fact about him. Now, let us dig deeper into that last question before we get into the conversation of the day to learn about his stretch story of coming from a very humble background and being the person that he is today, impacting lives, making changes through speaking. All right, now let's get to meet our guest fully and then get into the conversation. All right. Hi, David. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing awesome. Thank you
Awesome.
so much for having me on the podcast today.
Thank you for being here. I'm glad you made it, and thank you for taking out time off your busy schedule to be here. Now, I am interested in that last question. I would love to dig deeper because I love stories, right? So let us dig deeper before you tell us your stretch story of how you came from a humble background into the person that you are today. And I kind of have a strong feeling that, or this fun fact you just told us about yourself has a link to your story. But let us get into that fun fact. Now, you said when you were growing up, you couldn't speak to girls. Tell me what changed that you can now speak to girls, or is it that you can't speak to girls yet, but because they come to you, it becomes easier? Which of them? I want to find out.
Yeah, I think when I was younger, I was growing up in a family where mom was the only female in the family, and dad wasn't really around. So, and mom had two boys, myself and my younger brother. And later on, I went to secondary school. That was a military school. That was why you can see that ex-boy of the military school. That does not mean I'm now a girl. I mean, that does not mean I was once a boy and now I'm a girl. I'm still a bigger boy now. I'm a man. Okay, so I'm an ex-boy because I was once a boy and now I'm a man. But I went to a boys only secondary school. That's the military school, Nigerian military schools area. So I'm an ex-boy. And that is even a fun fact because people look at me and they're like, you don't look like you are in the military. You don't look like I even shoot guns. Yeah, I can shoot guns and I've never killed anyone anyway. I can shoot guns. I can actually go to war. Really crazy. I don't look like that. So being in the military school, there was really no exposure, to girls. There were times that some girls came to our school, and I would see boys approaching them, but I couldn't do that. Yeah, I have a religious background, and even today, I'm still a pastor. But back then, it was the craziest thing that would ever happen to one who has this image of pastor to go talking to God. So I wanted to avoid that as much as possible. But what that did for me was that it made me pretty shy. That people were asking me when I was younger, how would you propose to your wife? I was at the conference and I still told them the story. And I told them that the people asked me then that I was going to muster all the courage in the world to talk to whoever was going to be my wife. And over the years, as I got to the university, right, I started mixing with ladies. And I wouldn't really hold conversations with them. I would greet them because I had loved leadership. And I knew that leadership was really about caring for people and loving people. And if I wasn't going to greet people well, then I was not manifesting true leadership. But one thing is, as I greeted people and as I greeted ladies, they would respond to me in a very interesting way, like in a respectful way. And whenever I had conversations with them, they would come and want to hold a conversation. You would see them in their best behavior. That if you came around and you saw them talking to me, you would be so amazed that, oh my God, could you be so gentle and so civil and even so coordinated in your expression? Is it because you're talking to Pastor David? That was the expression on campus back then. So, yeah, that has been the story.
Just because I like gist a lot. So how did you talk to your wife the first time you met her?
Yeah, we talked about that at the conference. Even though at the conference I was to talk to them on leadership, they were just interested in hearing the story about my proposal. It wasn't so interesting, as I would say. And I'm sure the energetic EJ, before leaving Nigeria, you are aware about Deeper Life. So that's also another fun fact. I attend Deeper Life actually, and I'm not only a member at Deeper Life, I'm a preacher at Deeper Life. So
Wow.
it doesn't look like I am. So there's a whole lot that people really do not know about me that I think I need to do a better job at telling in 2023. Okay, so how did the proposal come about? It wasn't really a very smooth story. It wasn't a smooth journey, I would say, because the very first time I would meet my wife was in 2019. And before the end of 2019, I had gone to the marriage committee of my church to let them know about my intention. That was really pretty hard for me because for a while I was assistant pastor at the church where I was attending. We had young people in the church, we had elderly people, we had grandparents in the church. And at the time, because my pastor was still working, my pastor was not around for like 2 months. In fact, when he came around, he decided he was not going to be preaching. So I was really preaching. And this was during the moment when I was still pursuing this thing about my marriage with the marriage committee of my church. And this sister, who is now my wife, then, I just got to meet her. And, as much as I'm not that kind of person who would say, God told me, there was a particular passage in scriptures that God had impressed on my heart that that would be the picture of my wife. That's an, if we're allowed to say it on this podcast, that's in First Peter 3, where it's written that there is the ornament of a meek and quiet spirit, which is in the sight of God of great price. So when I saw my wife, that was what really shone. That was what really shined out to me. I don't know if shone is the correct or shine is the correct way to say that. So that was what really beamed forth to me. And then I saw that, and we started talking slowly, and we got deeper. We started having conversations. But according to the principle of my church, you can't tell a lady, you can't make any move until the marriage committee invites both of you to have that formal proposal. But we were actually getting to know each other. I was sharing with her some theological stuff. I was getting her response. I was really impressed with the response I was getting because, yeah, she could delay her responses, but when I would get the responses, essay length responses, wow. And let me tell you, I'm sapiosexual, meaning that I'm stimulated by intellectual stuff. So I was really falling in love. And every time she would come to church, as she would walk into church, I would get distracted on the pulpit, but I couldn't say anything to her. So you can imagine the kind of thing I was going through. And after 6 months in 2020, after 6 months, I had the opportunity to talk with her. But before that time, she had caught wind upon invitation of the marriage committee that there would be no other person in this area that would actually go to the committee but me. So she wasn't really pleased because at that moment, according to her, up to now, I still try to press her to make her say that she was actually kidding because she would say that she wasn't really thinking about anything regarding marriage at that moment. I know we can go on and on, but let me shorten the story. It so happened that because she said so, what was supposed to be our proposal, I did not treat as a proposal. Rather, I shared my vision for life. I said I wanted to be an auspicious leader, I wanted to be an affectionate husband, and I wanted to be an amiable father. Those are the three things I aim for in life. And that was what I shared with her. And then she told me why she couldn't really accept the proposal at that moment. 1 year passed after that moment that was supposed to be the initial proposal. I went my way. The relationship I went into did not work. It was actually 2 weeks before I was going to go to the marriage committee on that lady, but it didn't work because she reached out to me and told me, David, you did nothing. I just don't have peace. And then it was very hard because while I was still kind of dating the other lady, my present wife, who had told me she wasn't doing, came back, and I couldn't accept her because I told her that I had already proposed to another lady. Crazy story. So later on, the other lady said she wasn't doing anymore. I didn't know how to get back to my current wife. My pastor helped me in that season. My pastor just told me do something, and I was doubting if it was going to work. When I got back to my wife, she had a lot of questions, but the marriage committee would not allow you reach out to the brother and have the question. But she requested an opportunity. We had a clarifying conversation. So when I was going to propose to her, the job was already done because the clarifying conversation had helped her to actually get clarity. And when I was going to propose, in fact, she was laughing and she was saying, "What are you going to do?" She said, "You want to propose?" I said, "Yeah, I want to propose." And she said, "Is that necessary?" And I said, "Okay, let me just do it." And then she said, "I should read my script." And I was like, "Really? What made you feel like I have a script?" She said, "Are you not a professional speaker? I believe that you are going to prepare a script for this." And she was beaming throughout the process. And maybe there will be another podcast for that. You see, he's almost taking the whole of the podcast.
Good. And the rest is history. See, for me personally, this is one of your stretch stories because it wasn't easy for you to go back and forth. Somebody you felt strongly about that this is the person says, I don't think so. And then you went somewhere else and that was like, nope, sorry, sir, this is not working for me. That's quite interesting. And this is the reason, this is the thing for me and podcasting and the way that I run my podcast is I love to have conversations. Yes, we have an idea of what we want to talk about, but I don't joke with these little things that can just be interesting. I mean, for me, we could sit here and dissect this whole conversation because this is interesting. I know about, the deeper life church and everything, but I do not know this part that, about marriage, when it comes to marriage, that, you can't communicate directly with the intended spouse and you have to have a meeting with the committee when you have to talk to each other. That is interesting. That is interesting.
Well, things are revolutionizing now, because of the advent of social media. So the leadership is considering that because they know that if they would do that, then because a lot of people are leaving the church, but the church must do everything to keep its members. And so that is really revised. And the general superintendent of the church is even the one going hard on the marriage committee and making them soften on that because he believes that that was just a guideline, not a biblical principle.
But that's quite interesting, though. And I know, like you said, we could have another podcast episode dedicated to that to really zone in and say, what are some of the downside of bringing down the standards and what were the bright side or what were the advantages of being strict as much as they were. But I mean, it's quite interesting. Thank you for sharing that story with us. All right, so now let us get into your true stretch story. Tell me, David Lawal, what is this humble background that you came from, and what inspired your choice of career to who you are today as a person in leadership and specifically in the speaking and coaching space?
Well, the reason I have a humble story is because, and I'm not really proud of it, is because my dad was not around when I was younger. So mom raised my younger brother and I, and my mom is not a graduate of the university. My dad also is not a graduate, only that my dad actually had committed himself. My dad is a bibliophile. He reads. In fact, many of the books I read in my early years, I read from the collection of books that dad had. So that played that role in my life. But dad was not around. Dad was not around. In fact, there was a time when I was younger, dad came around. Mom, we were living in this kind of apartment in Africa, in Nigeria, called Face Me, I Face You. So that was where we lived. And we lived in several of those kind of apartments when I was younger. So I can remember when I was about 6, that came around. I can't remember exactly the age, but my recollection of it would say maybe 6 or 7. That came around, and mom had just finished beating me outside. My younger brother was still being beat by mom, but I'd come in naked, just the way 6 year old naked. So I'd come into the room and I saw this man, and then I ran out. I went to meet mommy. Mommy, there is a man in our room. Who is that man? But that was my dad. And my mom said, that's your dad. And so that stayed with us a while during that time. And after a while, we couldn't see him anymore. And I can remember writing a letter to him. Up till this day, he still refers to that letter. And that letter kind of broke him down, brought him back. And I remember I would sit on dad's laps and I would ask him several questions. I would see falling stars and I would ask him, why that? And he would answer all of my questions. And dad wasn't making much money. So I would ask daddy for, let's say, 20 naira, and daddy would give me 50 naira. So I saw that this man was not a bad man. He was just a victim of circumstances, a victim of some of the choices he had made. He was a generous man. In fact, his generosity affected the home so that he could now be present for the home and he could now provide for the home. So mom had to make sure that she worked in schools, private schools, because she wanted us to get very quality education. So she enrolled us in private schools where she was teaching so that, we could pay lesser because we were children of a teacher in the school. She would make chin chin very early in the morning. She would sell the chin chin during break time. We would get the chin chin from her. She would cook and put the food in the cooler. We would take the food from her during break time. So that was how we survived through school. So that contributed to the kind of education that I got. That was how I was able to go to the military school on merit, because when we had the entrance examination, I came first in the whole of Ogun State. When I went for the interview, I aced the interview. When they did all of the cumulative, physical, intellectual, mental, everything, I came out top in Ogun State. So they could not actually brush me aside. They needed an intellectual in the military, so they put me there. And that was like I went to the military school in hopes that after graduation from the military school, we get an automatic job in the Nigerian army. But it so turned out that my set was the very first set that was not posted and adopted into the military because of the UN policy on child soldiering that was in effect in 2011. So here am I. I got out of school and then still dug into that stack of books. And then I discovered John Maxwell's Talent is Never Enough. But before then, my uncle who was in the military had given me a book. And the book is titled Why I Wanted to Be Rich by Donald J. Trump. Then it wasn't anything near politics, right? Donald J. Trump and Robert Kiyosaki. And I can remember that the subtitle is When the Billionaire Meets the Millionaire. So I read the book and I discovered that they both have military backgrounds. And then in the book, I saw that the book was not really anything about wealth. It was everything about leadership. And because they had military backgrounds, I could also connect with that. I have a military background. And then I saw that, oh my, they were into leadership and they were speaking about leadership. And then I got to meet John Maxwell through his book, Talent is Never Enough. And that just really provoked my love for leadership. And then I started to listen to Matthias Shimolowo of Nigeria, and then Dr. Mensa Otabiro of Ghana. And then I started getting exposed to people, and I discovered that these people were actually making a living from speaking, and they were leadership trainers and leadership coaches and leadership speakers and conference speakers. And that just opened the world of speaking to me.
Wow, what a story and what a journey that brought you to this point. And so when you then got into the speaking part, what were some challenges you had at the beginning? And what would you say, top 3 lessons that your journey, your childhood into adulthood and how your childhood went has taught you? What are those life lessons? So 2 questions in one. First of all, what were your challenges when you started? And then looking at your story so far, what are your top 3 lessons that you would love to distill to my audience?
Yeah, some of the challenges I faced when I got started, definitely lack of funds, right? Because you need equipment to be able to do well, right? And it's still a bit of a challenge for me, not because I don't have some funds now, but because sometimes I feel like I could have achieved more if I had got, sponsorship at the beginning. I would not blame that on anybody. I would say that's my reality. Honestly, I would say it's my reality. I love the fact that I started that way. I started without funds, and then that allowed me to improvise. That allowed me to think very hard on being resourceful, even with meager resources. Like one of my friends from Canada would say, one of our co-trainers at the Global Masterful Speakers Network, his name is Leonge Laroche. He's a French Canadian. It would say that it's not about the resources you have, it's about your resourcefulness. So I faced the challenge of resources. And then again, I was pretty shy, as I told you guys. Yeah, so I can remember that initially one of the challenge I had was the issue with shyness. And this friend of mine, a senior of mine actually in a military school, had a mom, and the mom was really so kind to me and my grandparents. In fact, before my grandparents passed, my grandparents, both of them, before they passed, she was so kind to them, and she would come around like a child to them. In fact, they would call her their daughter. She would give me some money to augment the money I was taking as a pocket money back to the military school. She would ensure that we rode in a car, when we returned from Zaria to Lagos, right? And that was like an 18-hour journey or even more. And would get to Lagos in the night, sometimes midnight, and she would release her car to come pick a son and myself, and would be taken to the military barracks there at Ojo Cantonment, Lagos. And whenever would be returning back to school, to the military school, Nigerian military schools area, she would also release her car, would be driven to the bus station, taken back to Zaria. And she really had been so supportive. I remember when I first broke the news to her that I would no longer fight with weapons, but I would fight with words. I would become a professional speaker. Her reaction was, David, I know you. You are so shy. How are you gonna do it? And I said, I don't really understand, but it's a mystery to me that when I get before an audience, the greater the number of the people in the audience, the greater my confidence, the bolder I get. So that was quite really interesting and a bit challenging. I would say that I was an introvert, but one thing I learned from that was introversion, as one of my masterful speakers once said, is not a weakness, it's a strength we use less. In fact, when we speak to audiences, we must always get out of our way. As introverts, we shouldn't say we are naturally reserved, we are cold, we are reserved, we are calm. I remember when I was meeting people in the earlier days of my career, they would be having conversations with me, chatting with me, and they would hear that I was speaking at an event, and they would come and they would meet me in person after I'd spoken on the stage, and it would be a totally different person on the stage from who they were meeting, and I would be kind of cold. I was very chatty and conversational on WhatsApp or on even the earlier days of Tugo and Facebook, and they were so disappointed, and I would apologize afterwards online. I would say, sorry, I'm just naturally reserved. So, but whenever I got on stage, I knew that being on stage, as much as be yourself is a good advice, it might be a bad advice, because if I'm boring naturally, if I'm naturally reserved, if I'm naturally cold, if I don't get on that stage with energy, I might not be able to serve my audience. So I want to challenge you today as a viewer. that if you feel like you're an introvert and you're shy and you are cold and you're reserved, then you get on the stage and you sound like Cool FM and your body audience, you put them to sleep. That doesn't serve anybody. I wanted to reach out to the energetic EJ and draw some energy because you see, in speaking, we say content is king, and content is really king, but energy is queen. And without actually the energy, you can't have the queen that would mate with the king, rather the king to bear offsprings, to bear princes and princesses of impact in the life of the people who will listen to you. So I want to charge you on that. So let's get to some of the lessons I've learned from my story, my journey so far in the speaking world. Now, the first lesson I've learned actually is what has been for me like a code for life, a code for what I do. I tell myself constantly, David, never let your background put you back to the ground. Never let your background put you back to the ground. And it's my message to many young people. So a lot of people who have very humble backgrounds are drawn to me because of my story. And a lot of people I train because I have a heart, I'm open to people who really have the same story like me. I try to encourage them. I tell them, see, never let your background bring you back to the ground. And then another way I put that is to say that my challenges, my problems, my issues, my story, these are not excuses for failure. These are not excuses for me not succeeding. They are circumstances, they are the realities under which I must succeed. In fact, I feel like my success would have a greater glory to it because of these realities that are in my life. So if you have similar realities or even greater realities, then I want to say the greater would be your glory because you would have a story to tell, right? So that's one lesson I've learned. Another lesson I've learned actually is the fact that, when I was starting our resources wine there, I didn't even have mentors. I did not have models. But I've discovered that many times the things we feel we need to get started never come to us until we've got started. So you might think you need mentors, you might think you need resources to get started. But if you get started with what you have, then the people who come in contact with you might even volunteer without you asking them to mentor you to start mentoring you.
That
But
is
that has been
so
my
good. That is so good. I had to cut in there. That is so good. You have to start to attract the resources you need. Fantastic. Please go on.
Absolutely, absolutely. One of my friends actually, one of the most difficult names to pronounce. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier. Leon Roach would say it's not about the resources you have, but it's about being resourceful with the resources you have. So I started with the resources I had. I started training on WhatsApp, and my students suggested that we should start training on Facebook Live. We started training on Facebook Live. My students suggested that we started using Google Meet, and then we started using Google Meet, and then later I got to discover StreamYard through my students. Now I was learning and I was improving because I was training with the little knowledge I had. And now I have a lot of knowledge because I was training others with the little knowledge I had. Now, the people who I was training might have not had the same knowledge I had in regard to speaking, but they had other things that I did not have. So that exchange of value has really, really made me. In fact, I want to say that speaking and training people has really enriched my life. And I believe that that's the same story that the energetic EJ has. In our masterclass, the International Masterful Speakers Masterclass, after taking a masterclass and getting certified after a month, we induct you into what we call the Global Masterful Speakers Network, which is like a fellowship of masterful speakers. We're excitedly committed to helping other masterful speakers to keep on speaking masterfully. In that community, we provide platforms for masterful speakers and we expose them to other trainings because every month I get better because there is something my masterful speakers are telling me through their questions. It's something that they are even making as suggestions for the improvement of the masterclass. there are new things to me that when we adopt, the masterclass just gets better. So that has been really enriching for me. And I want to encourage you, if you feel like you have meager resources, get started. And I think the final lesson I would like to share is the lesson about articulation, because that's exactly the aim of every speaker. You want to sound very articulate, but I hope you don't want to sound like Sophia, the robot, because see, as human beings, we are not speech synthesizing machines. We can make certain blunders, but here is it. Here is what I've learned. Nobody sees the mess, the conflict that goes on in your mind while you speak. They can only hear the clear or unclear message that comes out of your mouth. That's the reality. And so you bear responsibility for the clarity or the unclearness of the message that comes out of your mouth, or of the expressions that come out of your mouth. So whenever you speak, okay, and you feel like there is conflict in your mind, and maybe after you've said something, your mind is telling you that wasn't properly expressed, and then you pause and you say, I'm sorry, I wanted to say this, and then you get yourself out of order, you get yourself out of composure, you are the one causing that. Here is something I've learned from experience, from recording myself and listening, that many times when I have that conflict on my mind, it doesn't reflect on whatever people hear from me. So definitely we take pauses to catch ourselves back. We take pauses to gain composure. But all in all, I want to tell you that in order for you to be fluent and articulate, just take your mind off whatever is happening, whatever conflict is happening on your mind. Just focus your attention on benefiting immensely the people in your audience, and feed them with your energy so that they too can give you that energy, so that it can be an exchange of content and energy, and it can be a really fantastic and fruitful experience when you interface with any audience before you.
This is so good, so good. It's so good, it's so good. Okay. I love that intercourse between content and energy. Okay.
I can
Content
imagine.
is king, energy is queen. Who else?
Yeah.
Hey, look at that. This is so good. Thank you so much, David Olawal. Thank you for this beautiful lessons drawn from your experience. Thank you for sharing your story with us. I mean, I believe that a lot of people can relate with this, coming from a humble background, but not allowing that to hold them back. So guys, if you are resonating, or if you have resonated with David's story here, I need you to reach out to him first of all. And if you know that your journey is in line with speaking, I need you to reach out to him as well. I need you to be a part of his community so that he can train you, he can hold you by the hands and dump you in the community of fellow masterful speaker. I love the way you rhymed it that time. I could not catch it, but I love it. Please, if anyone watching this right now, listening to this, wants to be a part of your community or wants to get on your program, how can they do that?
Yeah, I'm a bit primitive. I love engaging with people on WhatsApp, and then email. I'm still getting better. She would bear you testimony. I'm still getting better at email. I hope I will do better in 2023. So yeah, you can reach out to me on email, friendshipleadership@gmail.com for now, friendshipleadership@gmail.com. And then if you want it easy on WhatsApp, just send me a message. Tell me that you're from this amazing podcast, the Stretch Street podcast, and that's going to give you even a greater advantage. So on WhatsApp, it's +234 904668 7282. That's +234 904668 7282. If I could make a 30-second comment as we are coming to the end, I would say, still talking about resourcefulness, about mentorship and other things. These days, I'm speaking to very large audiences. In fact, I've spoken to an audience of 30,000 like a physical audience of 30,000 people with several amazing world-class people on the stage. Today, I share platforms with top government officials, commissioners. If I had waited and I'd looked at the fact that I did not have mentors, these things will not happen. Today, I share stages with people who had spoken in the United Nations General Assembly, and they reach out to me and they say, David, I wanted to do this way, and they correct me, and they do it in a spirit of, you are excellent. I believe that you just need to learn this and you'll get more excellent. So my encouragement to you is honesty, go out there, start what you have, and don't be afraid to reach those high-ranking people. Honor them, and because they also have a heart for impact, they would take you by the hand. They will actually put you upon their wings and teach you to soar.
That is so beautiful. Thank you so much, David. You've been a phenomenal guest, and I appreciate you for all the things that you've shared and the lessons that you've drawn out of your own experience. Thank you for blessing us with your story and how you are using that to impact lives today. Guys, you've heard it all from David. I need you to go back and listen again to this episode or watch it again to write down some of the things that popped at you. But then, as you write them out, can you write them back to me? Let me know what spoke to you the most of all the things that David shared in this episode. Type it in the comment section of this video if you're watching this on YouTube. And if you're watching this or if you're listening to this on Spotify or any of the podcast channels, maybe you will not be able to write in the comments. So please send me an email to stretchstreetpod@gmail.com and tell me what spoke to you the most in this episode. I would love to read from you. Also, if this is your first time listening to this podcast or watching me, thank you for joining me. Finally, where have you been? Anyways, thank you for joining. Please remember to subscribe. And if you're listening, please remember to favorite our podcast on the platform that you're listening on. And don't forget to reach out to me. You can also support the work that I do here at Stretch Street Podcast by buying me a cup of coffee. Come on. I know you can do that. I love coffee, cappuccino specifically. So you can buy me a cup of coffee by using the link connected to this episode that says buy me a coffee for as low as $5. And you can decide to buy me 10 cups of coffee or 7 cups of coffee for each day of the week. Thank you in advance. Gracias. And you can also support the work that I do by donating using the same link or my Patreon link that is also attached to the description of this podcast. Again, it's been a pleasure being here today on this episode, and I do hope that you found value. If you did, please send me your feedback. I am great on feedback. It helps me grow. So please, if you love me and you want me to grow, send me your feedback today. Till I come your way again next time with another story that is drawing out life lessons from that story that stretched them but didn't let them snap. Then this is the energetic EJ on the Stretch Street Podcast. Have a fantastic weekend. Bye-bye.